What is up, guys? It's your boy SteadyChaos. So I wanted to make a quick video about HGiG and dynamic tone mapping today. Now, I agree this topic has been absolutely beaten to death the last few months. I felt like there hasn't been much new to say about it the last few months. That's why I haven't made any videos about it. However, I've kind of noticed a change in how HGiG performs on my TV, and I'm not quite sure what to attribute it to. So I had always been in the camp that dynamic tone mapping was preferable in my C10 not because it was more accurate. No, it's less accurate than HGiG. HGiG is the way to go if you're a purist, if you want accuracy, as it follows the EOTF curve most closely with a hard clip at peak brightness. Dynamic tone mapping tends to use the TV uses an algorithm to try to brighten up the overall scene and imagery on a scene-by-scene basis. It's not following a strict EOTF curve, which is why it's less accurate. But the result was that you had an image that was globally brighter, that had maybe a little bit more color saturation, or at least the appearance of more color saturation. And so in that respect, it was easier to see, especially if you were viewing or gaming in a bright room with a lot of ambient light, it was easier to see what you were doing with dynamic tone mapping. So that is why I always advocated on its behalf. That's why I always preferred it. I like how accurate HGiG is. I could not see a lot of the times what I was doing. I felt like some of the detail was crushed. I felt like my visibility was poor. However, there's been two new things that have changed over the last week for me, and I find that now, for some reason, HGiG seems to be running better. It's not as dark. It doesn't seem to be crushing detail as much. Even in dark rooms, I was playing The Last of Us 2 the other day, in really dark rooms with a lot of indirect and ambient lighting in that game, there's really no direct lighting source because it's a post-apocalyptic setting. So you have a lot of, indirect and diffuse sunlight. You have some like moonlight or indirect shadows. So even in a dark and dreary game like that, HGiG was clear. I was able to see what I was doing, where I was going, even playing during the day. So I'm like, what has accounted for this change in HGiG, and why do I feel like it's performing better? Well, two things have changed, okay, over the last week, for me anyway, and for all of us. One thing for me and one thing for all of us, so that's two total, okay? So let's start out first with the fact that if you go to my YouTube page, my most recent video has been about an LG OLED TV firmware update that came out 03.21.09. Now, if you're in North America, it came out about a week to 9 days ago. I've had my firmware update for about a week now. If you're in other regions, you might not have gotten it yet, but rest assured you probably will get it. Now, the controversy behind this new update is that you see here in this Forbes article, latest LG OLED TV firmware update reportedly makes gaming duller. Some people on AVS forum were saying that with their light meters, they were calculating that average nits or peak brightness in game mode after the update was 525 nits, where previously before the update it had been 650 nits. So this accounted for a 20% reduction in overall brightness, which is substantial. Now, I have not noticed that problem. All my games seem just as bright post-update as pre-update. I have not seen any new glitches with this update. I have not seen my screen get dimmer or duller, as some people are reporting. So there's been a lot of confusion about what exactly this update did. Now, we have, since I posted this video, we have gotten some official patch notes from LG, and we can look at them right here. I pinned them. So we click read more. Now, there's nothing in this update that says anything about, the screen being dimmed or changed in any way, the brightness. It talks about eARC improvements, new models being added, Bluetooth improvements, lip sync, voice mode, AMD FreeSync support, fixed an issue with icons, yada yada, GeForce RTX 30 compatibility issues improved, HDMI 2.1 issues improved, improved VRR performance, and then other bugs and fixes were made, listen to TV sound on mobile through ThinQ app. So they've made generalized improvements and compatibility improvements with the RTX card. They've maybe worked on VRR a little bit. I don't know. Maybe something they have done to HGiG and the way the TV processes shadow detail makes it look better with this patch. I can't say for certain. What is more likely is that, especially if the brightness has been dimmed 20% with this patch, so what is more likely responsible for the change I am seeing in HGig's performance, at least on my part, is a video that HDTVTest and Vincent released on November 30th, 2020, which I never saw. I saw it a couple days ago. This is a gem of a video, let me tell you. So what Vincent basically says is you've been calibrating the HDR in your PS4 and PS5 on HGiG mode, you've been calibrating that incorrectly most likely. So he shows you how to go about doing it correctly. Now in your PlayStation 5's HDR calibration settings, you have 3 different slides that you have to calibrate. You have overall brightness of the TV you have to calibrate. Then you have specular highlight detail brightness. And then you have your black level. Okay, now what the PlayStation 5 and PlayStation 4 recommends you do is that you adjust the sliders so that the icon within the box is just barely visible. Now Vincent is saying that that is incorrect, and by setting it that way, you're not setting the floor of your LG OLED TV at pure black, which it should be. This is an LG OLED, it can display pure black. You want it to be set to pure black. And also by setting your highlight and specular, your overall brightness and specular highlight detail at the icon just barely visible, you're leaving nits on the table. You're not getting the absolute most out of your TV's HDR performance. So let me show you exactly how to go about setting your HDR sliders within your PlayStation 5 for your LG OLED TV so that you get the absolute best performance. And again, all credit goes to Vincent here. All credit goes to HDTVTest. If you don't want to watch my ugly mug, I would suggest you go to HDTVTest and you subscribe to their channel and you check out this video. You've been doing PS5 HDR adjustment wrong. Here's how to get the best settings. He can explain it to you far better than I can. He's a professional calibrator. He's a really bright guy. That said, if you were interested in finishing this video, which I hope you are, let me show you how exactly to set your PlayStation 5's calibration and how exactly HGiG and the various companies who are a part of HGiG recommend you set your calibration sliders. So what you want to do is you go to hgig.org right here, HDR Gaming Interest Group, which is a consortium of companies that take part in HGiG. And you scroll down to the bottom, you see for better HDR gaming, you click on this PDF, it brings up this, okay? Scroll down to where you get to this section right here. Now, provide 3 types of calibration screens to user. This is what the PlayStation 5 does specifically. Again, like I told you, you set the overall brightness of your TV in the PlayStation 5 HDR calibration. And then in slide 2, you set the specular highlight detail brightness level. And then in slide 3, you set the overall dark level of your TV. So, slide 1, what they recommend to do, okay, now remember, the PlayStation 5 says set it so that the icon is just barely visible within the box, okay? You don't want to do that, okay? Because when you do that, you're not getting the peak maximum brightness out of your LG OLED. You're leaving some nits on the table. Because what it says here is adjust the slider until gray squares just disappear. Not so that they're just visible, but so that they just disappear. So when you are setting the overall brightness of your PlayStation 5 in the HDR calibrator, the PlayStation 5 tells you to stop so that the logo is just visible. Don't do that, okay? Don't do that. Go until it's just visible, the icon, and then go 1-2 clicks above that, okay, with your D-pad. So go till it's just visible, then you go up 1 and then up another. And when you go up 2, you'll see that the icon is no longer visible. But when you do that, you're going to be getting the absolute peak brightness out of your television. And according to Vincent, and my experience too, is you won't be experiencing any additional clipping in your bright details. Instead, you're getting the absolute brightness out of your television. So oftentimes if you set it so like the PS5 recommends so that the icon is slightly visible, if your TV's brightness has a max nit brightness of 750 nits and you set it so that the icon is just slightly visible, you're probably getting somewhere around 720, 725 nits. So you're leaving some peak brightness on the table. If you go up 2 clicks so that that icon is no longer visible, you're not going to clip, but you're going to get up to that 750, 755 nit mark that your TV is fully capable of, and therefore you're extracting the maximum potential from your TV. And then if you go to slide 2 in the PlayStation 5 HDR calibration setting, which they say here, same thing, slide 2, you want to set it at exactly the same as slide 1. So you go until the icon in the box is barely visible, and then you go up 1-2 clicks and keep it there. So slide 1 and slide 2 in your PlayStation 5, barely visible, up 2 clicks. Leave them there, okay? And then your third slide in the PlayStation 5 is to set the black level of your HDR performance in HGiG mode. Same thing here. The PlayStation 5 recommends that you set it so that the icon within the box is just slightly visible. Well, if you do that, that means you're going to over brighten your darks a little bit because the icon is still slightly visible. You're not setting the black level to absolute black or absolute zero like it should be. And after all, this is an LG OLED. That's one of the greatest strengths of your OLED, is to be able to display absolute black or pure black. So when you get to slide 3 in your PlayStation 5 calibration, make sure that you adjust the slider until the gray squares disappear, okay? So kind of the same concept as the first 2 slides. Here, with a black level, you adjust down, 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 down until the icon is just barely visible. And then you keep going down all the way until you can't go any further. You want to get that black level in HDR to absolute black. So all the way down. Now, this, you would think, conventional wisdom would be, oh, this is going to crush my blacks. This is going to crush my shadow detail. I'm not going to be able to see. Well, this is where things get interesting because your LG OLED is capable of displaying pure black. So you want to set your HDR to pure black. Now, prior to this 03. What is it? It's 03.21.09. Prior to this update, it would crush my shadow detail. It would make things too dark. I wouldn't be able to see. That's why I use dynamic tone mapping. Now, when I set my HGiG and HDR calibration the way Vincent says in post firmware update, my shadow detail is not crushed. I can still see in dark areas in The Last of Us Part 2. I can see in Demon Souls. I have good overall shadow detail in HGiG, which is a departure from what it used to be just a week and a half ago. So that is why I say I'm not entirely sure what's responsible for this improved performance in HGiG. I've been gaming in nothing but HGiG for the last week because I'm now making sure that I extract the peak brightness from my LG C10. And then with the last slide, I'm now making sure that I'm getting my HDR to absolute black. So maybe the perception on my behalf of contrast is improved because I'm getting pure black when it should be pure black. And I'm also extracting the absolute peak nit potential from my LG C10, which has resulted in a greater range of brightness, which has resulted in an overall more pleasing image. I can't say for sure if it's Vincent's calibration, if it's the firmware update, I don't know. But all I know is that HGiG is performing better right now. So I have to imagine it could be both. It could be subtle improvements made with the most recent firmware update, which is kind of odd because a lot of people are saying that it reduced brightness, but who knows. And it's also partially probably because of Vincent and HDTVTest recommendations on how to properly set your HDR calibration within the PlayStation 5 user interface, using these recommendations specifically from HGiG.org. So either way, try out these calibration settings suggested by HGiG.org and let me know what you think in the comment section down below after you use HGiG for a little while. Do you feel like the shadow detail in HGiG is better? Do you feel like the visibility is better? I'm really curious. Maybe it's some sort of placebo effect on me. Because I'm now adjusting the sliders a certain way, because I've gotten this firmware update, maybe I think, my brain is telling me, oh yeah, it should look better because you've made changes. So maybe in that respect, it's a placebo effect. I don't know. So that's why I'm saying maybe you guys can go and try out some of these slider settings within your PlayStation 5 and your LG OLED, and you can report back and let me know if HGiG looks better to you, okay? So hopefully you guys have found this video helpful, and again, all credit goes to Vincent and HDTVTest for recommending these sliders based off of HGiG.org. And yeah, if you've enjoyed this video, please leave a like, leave a comment, and we will see you guys later. Peace.